Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. AT&T CFO came out recently and said that fixed wireless access is not a great product. We'll take a look at that, as well as their plans for fiber deployment and the plans of some other major providers on what they're going to be doing with fiber as well. Be right back. Hey there, Rick Uzzi with Broadband Deployment News. I'm going to be talking about this again, what AT&T said, the CFO at AT&T. But while you're watching, feel free to join in the conversation. You can go ahead and type something in the chat, live chat, or type something in the comments. We'll look at that later. So appreciate your joining me today. So again, I was going to talk about what the CFO said here. He said, not a great product. AT&T not looking to invest heavily in fixed wireless. The company's CFO compared fixed wireless to empty calories. This was in Broadband Breakfast, as you see here. So I was going to look through this article and a little comment on what he's saying here. So the CFO of AT&T said Monday that the company doesn't see fixed wireless as a great long-term solution as the company focuses on plowing fiber at a record pace. Fixed wireless in certain cases is kind of nice. It's a nice catch product where we have a copper customer that we're going to get to in the next 12 to 24 months, said Pascal Desroche during Deutsche Bank's annual Media, Internet, and Telecom conference. So again, he's conceding that there's a place for fixed wireless. When he's talking about copper customers, he's talking about people that are on DSL that, if they can't get to them anytime soon with fiber, they want to provide a better service maybe than they have for that. So they're looking at, I'm sure, 5G with some of the spectrum that they have there to be able to upgrade those customers to something a little bit faster. So it's kind of a stopgap measure is the way he's describing it. It says, but long term, it's not a solution we want to put a lot of resources behind. Why? Because it's not a great product and the customer ultimately is going to reject it, he said. That is our belief. When you look at the amount of bandwidth that's consumed in the home over time, the customer's experience is going to degrade. We don't think it's a product that we want to spend a lot of resources on. So, AT&T, they're in a position of having actually less mid-band spectrum than T-Mobile and Verizon. So AT&T doesn't have a lot of the spectrum that they have. So they really haven't been able to go out and do a lot with 5G, which is one reason I think they're not going out. I think they would be doing more of that, just like T-Mobile is. And T-Mobile's doing the most of it because they have the most spectrum and are able to do that. Verizon's doing that. And Verizon's been putting a lot of emphasis on fixed wireless as well, whereas AT&T is not. Now, T-Mobile will tell you that we will take fixed wireless customers, fixed wireless access customers, where it's actually like broadband in your home, but it's fixed wireless access, where they have spectrum available. And for example, I've checked in my area a couple of times and it always says something like, hey, we can take your order, but it's limited. In other words, act now or you may not get it. Because if they get to a point where they don't have enough spectrum, they don't want to jeopardize their mobile business because that's really where they're making their money. So, I think what Desroche is saying here is that, again, they have less spectrum. So they feel like as these networks get congested, the operators have to back off on that, or they would just get congested and people won't get the same kind of service. And like he says, it'll get degraded here. So they're not spending a lot of resources on that, and they don't frankly have the spectrum to be able to do that. AT&T CEO John Stankey said early last year that fixed wireless still plays an important role for rural Americans, regions that are otherwise financially difficult to connect with fiber. And that's going to be the case. There are going to be areas that are going to be very expensive for fiber. And again, that might be put off for a long period of time. And if you can get fixed wireless out there, that's a good time to do it. And actually, T-Mobile, one of the reasons I think they are deploying as much fixed wireless as they can is to try to lock down those areas if they can to prevent other operators from coming in there, because really they're limited to fixed wireless. That's their business. They're a wireless provider. They don't have, unlike Verizon that has Fios and unlike AT&T that is doing lots of fiber, they don't have that. So they're trying to lock down that area. Verizon, they're also trying to get fixed wireless out there as quickly as possible. I think they have more spectrum than AT&T, again, so that they can lock out some of those areas if they can. And then later, that can provide them with the ability to go in and provide fiber. So I guess another tactic they could take would be to try to get funds to be able to do that, to get federal funds. But I think what they're trying to do is lock out other operators that might come in and overbuild that area of the fiber. So they're putting out they've been focusing more, it seems like, on fixed wireless and less on their Fios product. So again, this is from Stanky, I believe, or maybe this is just AT&T in general. So it's also been the subject of reports in the center of heated debates, this is fixed wireless, over whether government should plow federal funds into such bills as an effort to connect the entire nation to high-speed internet. When the FCC, for example, announced its initial awards from its $9.2 billion RDOF, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, critics panned its decision to award large amounts of fixed wireless technologies because of alleged unproven high-speed promises. And, RDOF was one that, unlike CAF2, it had higher tiers of gigabit service, and there were fixed wireless operators that bid in that realm of gigabit service. It mentions here, on review, the commission even revoked RDOF money initially awarded to LTD Broadband, one of the largest initial recipients of the fund, because it didn't think it was reasonably capable of deploying a network of the scope, scale, and size required by its bids. Now, I think most of that had to do with the fact that LTD Broadband just didn't seem to have their act together. And if they didn't have their act together on all of the paperwork and getting set up as to be able to provide voice in each state and those kinds of things, they just missed deadlines. So they, if they can't get that stuff together, how are they actually going to get their fixed wireless broadband deployment delivery together? I think that was the biggest thing there. Then it mentions last week, fixed wireless service provider Starry filed for bankruptcy. That was, I guess, 2 weeks ago, maybe. And, Starry, that was a situation where Starry won RDOF funds, but then they pulled out voluntarily because they were just not in a good situation financially. Not so much that it was fixed wireless, because fixed wireless is less expensive to deploy. It was because they just were counting on a lot of capital, and suddenly the cost of capital had gone way up, and they just, they had to retrench basically, and then just focus on their main business and decide that they were not going to expand with these RDOF funds. So the cost of being able to deploy that had gone way up, even though they weren't going to be doing, well, maybe they were going to do, I think, a combination of wireless and fiber, but the cost of all that went up. Fiber favored by federal government's broadband bill. The NTIA has already said that it favors fiber builds, but state recipients of the funds must consider all types of builds. So they are putting their thumb on the scale for fiber, but they've said that states have to consider all types of services that they would consider reliable broadband. Fixed wireless is one that would be considered reliable broadband if it's using licensed spectrum or a combination of licensed and unlicensed. If it's all unlicensed, it's not considered reliable broadband. Satellite is not considered reliable broadband. However, states can consider unlicensed spectrum, fixed wireless, and satellite broadband if that's the only alternative to be able to reach that area without it being extra high cost, basically. So they have some leeway even there. He says, candidly, we'd much rather take our resources, focus on deploying more fiber, Desroche said. Let's not get distracted by chasing empty calories in the near term. Desroche said it is penetrating at twice the level compared to the first year of its plan. This is as far as fiber. It expects to bring 30 million or more households inside its fiber footprint over the next several years. This is a product that is durable. The maintenance associated with it is much more attractive than our copper footprint. There's no doubt about that. So again, they are, in a lot of these areas, really what they're doing is overbuilding their DSL plant. So these are areas where customers are not getting good speeds. It's old infrastructure. It's copper network, and it's old copper infrastructure. So this is stuff that needs to be swapped out, and that's what they're focusing their time doing. Whereas again, Verizon is, I think, in places putting in fixed wireless as the stopgap, and then they're going to be looking, I think, probably at getting fiber in those areas as well at some point. Desroche said the company's joint venture with investment firm BlackRock to build fiber outside its footprint could be expanded if things prove out as the company expects. So what they announced a few weeks ago was this joint venture with this company called BlackRock, where BlackRock's going to be building, basically it's an open access network. So BlackRock does the fiber builds, so AT&T doesn't need to deal with building out the infrastructure. And then AT&T will be kind of the premier tenant, I suppose, on that open access network. So wherever BlackRock is going to build out, AT&T and BlackRock are going to share the costs. AT&T will be one of the retail providers on that open access fiber network, but other providers, any other operator can come in there and compete on that network as well. But that's the way that AT&T is looking at expanding their internet footprint, their broadband footprint, without having to put in the infrastructure solely on their own. And the plan to plow fiber inside and outside of its footprint is expected to be accelerated, he said, with money coming from NTIA's BEAD program. We're going to be able to capitalize on that money coming to the marketplace over the next several years at an accelerated pace versus if we had just done it ourselves. So again, that's money that they're looking for possibly in the future, and as they see in these areas maybe where they've got old DSL infrastructure, that they can apply for BEAD funds there to hit some of these areas that are going to be more expensive. And there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to do that. They're an experienced operator, certainly an experienced fiber operator. And if they already got infrastructure over there, they would be a viable candidate to be able to get BEAD funds in that area. So they're looking ahead to that. There's another couple of stories here I want to look at on other operators and what their plans are for fiber. So this is in Fierce Telecom. Here's how much fiber U.S. operators are planning to build in 2023, and they certainly don't list them all, but with Q4 2022 earnings mostly in the rear view, a clearer picture of fiber build targets for the coming years emerged. While some operators have lowered their targets for both 2023 and their overall build plans, the industry still plans to build millions of passings. Fierce's informal tally found 6.5 million and 7 million new locations at a minimum. That doesn't include AT&T fiber joint venture, the fiber joint venture I was just talking about, BlackRock. So they're not including that in the 6.5 to 7 million guesstimate, or Verizon's fuzzy Fios goal, or as yet unclear fiber targets from more than a half dozen operators mentioned at the bottom of the story. Nor does it include deployments from the sprawling array of smaller fiber builders on the U.S. telecom scene. So there are a lot of smaller operators, fiber operators that are building in, parts of a state or a state, maybe one or two states, but not as big as these. Now, we've seen a lot of fiber operators, they had come out and given advanced plans as far as what they were thinking they were going to do in 2023, and a lot of them have pulled back on that. There's a couple of reasons I think that is. One is just, again, the cost of money has gone up, inflation has gone up, the cost of products. So a lot of them are seeing that it's more expensive to build out that fiber now than it was before. That's one reason. I think another reason is that some of them are realizing, there's a lot of federal money out there, and we should maybe be able to wait for that. So if they've got an area that they think that would, or that they know should be an area that would get funds through, let's say, the BEAD program, why build it now when you can wait and then work through the state and get BEAD funds for that area? I think that's one thing that some fiber operators are looking at, as they go, we think we can get this area later and get funded for that rather than doing that now. AT&T, as we just talked a lot about, but here this mentions 2 million to 2.5 million new locations annually from 2023. 30 million passings by the end of 2025 is what they're expecting. And again, it mentions the Gigapower joint venture that aims to deploy to 1.5 million locations. Altus USA is now looking at reaching 900,000 passings in 2023, a slight step down from the million it had added in 2022, and that's down from its original target of 1.6 million. So again, they pulled back, but again, because of the factors I mentioned, I think that's a couple of reasons they may have done that. Blue Peak, a regional player in the central part of the country, reached 70,000 new locations in 2022 and is targeting more than 50,000 in 2023, so pulling back a little bit from what they did last year. Brightspeed, and that was, it mentions here, born from Lumen Technologies when they sold off their ILEC assets in 20 states, is looking to reach more than 1 million passings by the end of 2023 and 3 million within 5 years. You can see some of the states that they are planning here on deploying that fiber. Frontier, they were in bankruptcy after emerging from bankruptcy in 2021. They said its original fiber build plan would reach 1.6 million locations in 2023. That figure is now 1.3 million, so they've pulled back a little. I expect some of that is monetary as well, as again, they're probably thinking, let's get some funding from BEAD in order to be able to do this. And Frontier is one that really did need, they were in serious, they were not in good shape. They were mostly DSL, and they've done a good job of overbuilding a lot of that fiber to be able to make their service more relevant where they are. So they've gone a long way toward that. It looks like they pulled back just a little bit. They're still planning on doing 1.3 million in 2023. Lumen Technologies just cut its overall fiber build target from 12 million to 10 million, and is targeting 500,000 passings in 2023. That compares to a previously expected range of 1.5 to 2 million. So they've pulled back quite a bit. They said they want to ensure it's deploying fiber deliberately rather than just for the sake of it. So they are going to focus deliberately on where they really need to do this. And again, in other areas, they are probably leaving the window open for federal funding, I would expect. And also, again, I think one thing's, again, costs are high now and operators are probably putting the brakes on because of that in some places. And then also thinking, if we do hold off and costs come down, it's going to wind up costing us less in the future. Usually don't think that, but it's going to wind up costing them less. Let's say if the cost of some of this equipment and the cost of fiber and interest rates maybe eventually come down, although it seems like they're going to go up again, that could help the economic situation if they hold off on some of that. Metronet striving to reach well over 500,000 new passings in 2023. Chantel targeting the completion of around 100,000 passings in 2023. The operator is pushing to reach a total of 450,000 fiber passings by 2026 and ended 2022 with a total of 147,000. TDS Telecom, they went from 133,000 in 2022 to projected 175,000 in 2023. Aiming to hit 1.2 million locations by 2026. They ended 2022 with 582,000 passings. Verizon hasn't talked too much about Fios lately, but it seems expansion efforts are ongoing. And he's very vague. CEO Hans Vestberg said, we expanded our Fios footprint by over 550,000 locations. You can expect continued fiber expansions in the year ahead. Now, again, they've been announcing pretty good numbers on the fixed wireless front. So they've been focusing a lot on fixed wireless because they do have a good amount of spectrum, not I think as much as T-Mobile, but so they've been looking at, they originally started with millimeter wave. Verizon had a lot of millimeter wave spectrum, and they were actually focusing on that in urban areas. But you can only get, the areas can only be so big. You got lots of small cells. You need line of sight. So once they were able to get some of this mid-band spectrum, and I think they might have got it from the C-band spectrum that they acquired, all licensed spectrum, they were able to start going full and heavy on 5G. Then mentions the others here. Consolidated's case, it says Consolidated hadn't given their numbers because Q4 earnings call hadn't happened yet, but actually as of just a few days after this article was written, it did happen. So take a quick look at that. So you've got Consolidated here. Consolidated Communications revealed plans to slow the pace of its fiber build and ramp its marketing efforts to boost penetration in 2023. The operator ended 2022 with fiber deployments in 8 of the 22 states in its territory and 123,000 fiber connections. It added 60,700 passings in Q4, 403,000 for the full year, crossing the 1 million passings mark on its way to a goal of 1.6 million, or 70% of its footprint. Fiber now accounts for 38% of its 2.6 million total passings. Consolidated said it's aiming to boost that number to 50% by the end of 2023, with the addition of a minimum of 225,000 passings. So they're still going strong, trying to get as much fiber as they can to, again, overcome some of their old infrastructure. And they're doing well as far as getting federal funds to be able to do a lot of this. On the grant front, the CEO noted that Consolidated has won $150 million in grant funding since 2019 and plans to chase another $100 million. Expansion plans for 2023 include at least 19,000 subsidized new passings in Vermont, a pair of grants in Maine, totaling nearly $17 million to help it reach 15,800 new locations. And then Q4 by the numbers, consumer revenue of $115 million was down year on year as gains in Consolidated's broadband segment failed to offset revenue slides in its voice and video business. So this is another thing that, that some of these operators are seeing. So Consolidated, even though they're spending a lot of money and they're getting a lot of it subsidized, they're still losing money. They're losing customers in various areas. You've got people cutting the cord with voice and video, so they've lost some of that. Consumer fiber revenue specifically was up 49% to 24 million. Overall, though, it lost 184,000 broadband subscribers as copper and DSL losses more than offset its fiber gains. So that could be telephone service as well as DSL when they're talking about copper there. So again, they're gaining broadband customers, but they're losing lots of customers. That's one reason that operators like Consolidated and Frontier that have got a lot of DSL infrastructure are trying to get that overbuilt with fiber as soon as they can because they were losing these subscribers and not necessarily replacing them on their own service because they don't have anything there. So people are probably going to fixed wireless service, most likely, because there's probably not a cable operator there if they're still on DSL would be my guess, or maybe there's not a high speed. Maybe there's an older cable operator there with infrastructure that can't necessarily do that much better than DSL. But that's what some of these operators are facing when they look at this. So last part of the story right here, the operator's net loss of $35 million was compared to a profit of $15 million in the fourth quarter of 2021. So you can see, again, lots of subscriber losses, even though they're making good progress on the fiber side. So see, Conway Fan 98, Brightspeed is my current provider, providing 1.5 meg DSL. I prefer they build fiber in my area rather than Charter Communications through RDOF. Charter charges $130 for gig service, while Brightspeed only charges $70 for gig service. Yeah. Wow, I didn't realize the difference was that big. $130 for gig service. That's really high. I think competitively that you may find that I don't know if you have you may soon. I think we've talked about this. You may soon have maybe somebody like T-Mobile come in and offer a competitive option that won't necessarily be a gig service, but it would be something that'll provide another broadband option for you in addition to whatever you can get from Brightspeed and from Charter. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I want to find out what happens in this area because I know it's frustrating for you. So one of these guys are going to be building something soon. They need to. And again, it'll be interesting to see if a wireless operator can come in there and maybe do something to help with the pricing. Because yeah, if you get one operator in there and they can do gig, like if Brightspeed came in, are they charging $70 where they have competition, or is it because there's competition there? If there's competition there, maybe that's why the price is $70. Because $70 for a gig is not that bad. I think AT&T is about that price, $70, $80, something like that. Sometimes you'll see it down to maybe 50 or 60 if it's a municipality or a co-op or somebody where it's more of a not-for-profit kind of thing. So, but hopefully I'm rooting for you. I'm hoping that you get something soon here. So keep us posted on this broadcast. So thanks everyone for joining me. If this was interesting or helpful, if you'd give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. Again, if you want to comment on anything, go ahead and drop that in YouTube. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button and ring the little bell to be notified when I'm live. Appreciate it. I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.